Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I'm Ted, hanging out with the full contingent today.
I'm Nate.
I'm Dave.
I'm Ryan.
And today we're going to do some Game Master's tips, and that is to let you know you don't need permission. Commenters are talking about always waiting on, Watts to say it's okay to do this or it's not okay to do that.
Or here's the rules for this.
Here's the rules for that. DMG literally spells out, it's your game, do what you want. So,
the beginning of the PHB. Here's the 12 classes that are normally found in most places and most campaign settings and worlds. You don't even need them. You can just be like, hey guys, I don't have
4 classes in my game.
Yeah, I have 4 classes in my games: Fighter, Wizard, Rogue,
An elf.
Elf
Is a class.
and bam.
yeah, or you want
harken back to the day.
You want to play a game where arcane magic doesn't exist, or magic doesn't exist,
Or
Or none of your
exist.
PCs can play arcane casters.
right?
Or the only race is humans.
Yeah.
So,
What do you think?
a big part of what 5th edition has done, it's really thrown the ball back in the DM's court. Now, I've heard people complain they feel like the rules are incomplete because they're not told exactly what to do like they do in Pathfinder and 3.5. Which, for instance, I had a discussion with someone. They're like, well, what good is grappling? Because if I'm a spellcaster, I'll just the dimension door out, or I'll just cast my spell. Well, if it requires a somatic component, I like to refer to the rule known as common sense. Going, if you're holding someone's arms, they cannot do all this stuff and cast spells. If someone is trying to use a verbal, if you stuff a dirty sock in their mouth, they can't talk. Little things like this you can do in your game, and no one has to tell you it's okay.
It doesn't have to be a feat called Mage Stopper or something.
I have to say that there was definitely times in 3.5 where I was definitely the guy at the table who was like, okay, well, this rule says here that I can or can't do this.
Page 67, the PHB combat chapter.
It really detracts. It really detracts from the entire game, and when you're sitting there DMing and your player's trying to say, well, no, you're wrong because of this and that. It's one thing if you're asking someone to look it up for you. It's another thing for your player to just straight up be, telling you that you're wrong. So the fact that it really has put the power back in the DM's hands, if there's something that the DM says this is the way it goes, that's just the way it goes. Forget about what rule is printed on what page anywhere. DM has spoken, his word is law, or her word is law.
And if you can't deal with that, find a new DM. That's kind of the deal.
Well, I mean, because people will even ask with stuff about races and classes and stuff like that, and everything is kind of conditional to your DM letting you do it. Any advice that we're gonna give, it's well, but if your DM says no, then guess what? That they don't want that in their game. They don't want that to work that way.
And that's exactly the way it works. The only game that I'm in that you guys aren't. There's a group of paladins, or a pair of paladins, and they always hold their initiative for whoever's going second, so that they fight at the same time. So they ask the DMs, okay, what kind of advantage is this going to give me? Do we get advantage? Do we get something? And she's like, well, advantage all the time is just is too much, but she gave them a flat +3. On their attacks, and I'm like, well, I don't know how I, would rule it, but I'm not the DM,
so it doesn't matter.
And this is what she said, so I'm like, you know what? I don't need to think about it, because it's not my character that's being affected. So it's cool to see.
Ridiculous, but I understand your point.
It is cool to see that it's well, the rules say there is no.
Well, I mean,
rules.
there's only help, which one of them gives away that doesn't do their attack, so the other person gets the advantage on the attack.
No. That is an option.
Yeah.
They're literally fighting at the same time.
Yeah.
So they're timing their attacks to go
pack
off.
tactics.
Which pack tactics gives advantage, but she doesn't want to give advantage for every single one of her attacks.
Yeah.
So since advantage typically warrants a +5, she says, I'm just going to pare that down to a +3.
Okay.
So in this
GM, I would do +2. I think. Yeah. But yeah.
I didn't have to put any thought into it because it wasn't my game, but
I still think about the rules calling whether I'm not running the game.
Well, yeah.
But that's the great thing about it. We all get to as DMs, we all get to decide in our game how we want to do things.
Right. So it was cool to see the thought process, and I actually I asked her how she came to that and what she thought, and it was cool. So that's something that actually happens in a game because
she made that ruling.
Because she made that ruling because there's literally not a rule listed in the books for how to do it.
Yeah, I wish I remember what someone was talking about in a comment, and it was like, well, I'm going to wait for Watts to say whatever. I'm like, well, who cares? If you want to run it this way, run it this way.
We're not waiting for Watts.
Yeah,
we're
if
not
you want to
gonna,
run it the other way, run it they both work. It doesn't matter. It's just a fucking game. People.
Yeah, and doesn't it eventually
play it the way you want to play it?
in the end, your story gets done if
Right.
you decide to just use rules on your own. And otherwise you're going to be waiting to do that story, right? So who cares if you did it differently than Watts is going to do it a year from now?
Now, the whole thing with I'm the DM, like, that's what I said. The caveat to this is, if you're making sweeping changes in the game, then yes, you should inform your players, and they should be
Beforehand,
aware.
yeah.
Don't be like, it doesn't work here like that during play. No, if you're doing a bunch of house rules and homebrewing a bunch of shit,
You're like,
tell
we're
'em.
playing Dungeons and Dragons, but there are in fact no Dungeons and or Dragons in this adventure or game.
But I'm not going to tell you about that. You're going to find it out as we play.
Yeah.
Or the person who shows up with this long rich story about his elven character, and you say, oh, there's no elves in my game.
Yeah, all the elves went extinct 100 years ago. You're like,
Like so like in session 0, if you're doing a lot of changes to the core rules and core books, then yes, session 0, you should be setting the expectations of your players. They should be telling you what their expectations are, and you should be laying out this stuff. If you have all these details figured out, and you're making a lot of changes, I personally think you should let your players weigh in and get their opinions and feedback and use it however you will. It doesn't have to necessarily be a democracy, but I think because
But if you have a dictatorship, you will have no players.
yeah,
like
it's a shared experience.
Yeah.
So you should find some middle ground in there whenever possible.
So I think that's pretty much all that needs to be said about this. And
Yeah, guys, go out and play the game the way you want to play it. Make it your game, right? You don't worry about Wizards of the Coast game. Don't worry about White Wolf's game. Don't worry about Green Ronin's game. You don't have to worry about Paizo, any of those guys. It's your game. Play it however you want. Have fun. If it seems more fun to do this instead of that, do it. Let us know what you're doing in your game to make it more fun in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can patronize us in a good way on Patreon.
You can head over to nerdarchy.com and check out the store.
and we'll talk about this on Nerdarchy subreddit.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.